We're following a big update in a case out of North Carolina. A dad accused of killing his 4 children over multiple months and hiding their bodies. He then called 911 to tell dispatchers what he allegedly did.
Man, I murdered my children, a couple of my children, a couple months ago. They're in my garage, man.
A grand jury has indicted Wellington Dickens III in this horrific case. The bodies were found in the trunk of a car at his home. The ages of the children, between 6 and 18 years old. And not only that, I'll show you what we found when we dove into federal court records about this man accused of the unthinkable. The lawsuits he once filed, one even referencing 666 and the devil. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Stewart. The dad in this case was supposed to be the protector of his kids. One of his alleged victims, his 18-year-old stepson, the 3 others are his own children. That includes a victim who is just 6 years old. Now, before we dive into what could come next in this story, in the court case, I want to bring you back to the moment that this accused killer called 911.
Johnston County 911, location of emergency.
Yes, I got an emergency, but it's not an emergent, but just have a confession,
Okay.
It's horrible.
Okay, what's your address?
If I could, I got my son here. He's with me. It's no issue, but if you could honestly come with no issues, I don't have no gun, I don't have nothing like that. I don't plan on doing nothing crazy. I just would like to make the scene as less profile as possible. But if you need to do what you got to do, if you want to get crazy, that's fine. But I'm just letting you know what my preference would be. I'm not an issue, but it is a problem, and just having my mind is just thinking I need to do this because it's just the right thing to do. And
okay, I got you. What's your address here? Where are you?
I'm at 101 Spring 2 Drive.
Okay, and tell me a little bit what's going on out there.
Man, I murdered my children, a couple of my children, a couple months ago. They're in my garage, man.
That is a chilling phone call that came in on October 27th in Zebulon, North Carolina. It's outside of Raleigh, and it was allegedly made by a man named Wellington Dickens III. Now, that phone call lasted roughly 7 minutes. Since this story first broke, I also just keep thinking about the dispatcher who took that call and what must have been going through their mind as they were listening to what this dad was telling them. Now, when police responded to Dickens' home, they found the bodies of 4 victims in the trunk of a car that was parked in his garage. Now, to this point, deputies believe that Dickens killed his 18-year-old stepson, who's been identified as Sean Brasfield, in September of this year. His 10-year-old son, Wellington Dickens, was killed in roughly August or early September, they say. And then you have 9-year-old Zoe Dickens, who they believe was killed in August of this year, and Leah Dickens, who was just 6 years old. She reportedly died in May of this year. Now, here's what the local sheriff said when Dickens was arrested.
Folks, there's no known motive at this point why Mr. Dickens murdered these children. But as the sheriff, as a father, and as a grandfather, I can stand here and say there's no reason for a father to murder his children.
There's obviously no explanation that will ever make sense that could explain why a father would do this to his own kids. But we are learning more about Wellington Dickens III's past, and it includes some bizarre lawsuits that he filed over the years. Before we get into those lawsuits, let's dive into what a grand jury decided this week, because that's also a huge development in this story. According to ABC 11 in Raleigh, North Carolina, the grand jury indicted Wellington Dickens III on first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and second-degree inherently dangerous without regard to human life. Court documents say that he willfully and feloniously, and of malice aforethought, killed each one of his children. When police responded to that home, they say they found the bodies of his kids wrapped and sealed inside his car. Now, inside that home, police say they did find Dickens' 3-year-old son. He was alive, and he's now in state custody. Now, as far as the cause of death for the victims, here are Dickens' own words in that 911 call about what he said happened.
Johnston County 911, location of emergency.
Yes, I got an emergency, but it's not emergent, but just have a confession,
Okay.
It's horrible.
Okay, what's your address?
If I could, I got my son here. He's with me. It's no issue. But if you could honestly come with no issues, I don't have no gun. I don't have nothing like that. I don't plan on doing nothing crazy. I just would like to make the scene as less profile as possible. But if you need to do what you got to do, if you want to get crazy, that's fine. But I'm just letting you know what my preference would be. I'm not an issue, but it is a problem, and just having my mind is just thinking I need to do this because it's just the right thing to do. And
okay, I got you. What's your address here? Where are you?
I'm at 101 Springtooth Drive.
Okay, and tell me a little bit what's going on out there.
Man, I murdered my children, a couple of my children, a couple of months ago. They're in my garage, man. I murdered my children, not all of them.
Okay.
I had one that I accidentally killed first by hitting her excessively.
Okay.
I was nervous about her, and I was trying to manipulate my children and making them make a decision that I was supposed to make.
Okay. All right.
I'm no threat, man. I'll be wherever you need me to be. If you want me to be outside before, I don't got no. Okay. I'm planning on just letting myself. I never been. This is totally new for me.
Understood.
And I'm not blaming nobody but myself.
Okay. I just want to verify how many in total were there.
I have my daughter, my youngest daughter.
Okay. Just one? Is that correct?
No.
How many in total?
No. There's 3 of mine and my stepson, and everybody. I mean, it was my fault. Everybody, it was my fault for everything.
Okay. So I want you to just hang tight here while I get you some help into the area, okay?
They in the trunk. They in the trunk of my car, in the garage, to be specific. And I was just out of my mind. Nobody made me do nothing. It was all me. And I was just up from the first one, and I lost my mind. I wasn't thinking right. I was on the drugs and I was smoking, drinking.
Yes,
I was doing ice, everything.
Got it. Okay. I want you to hold on one moment because
everything. Mushrooms. I was on a lot of stuff.
Okay. I want you to hold on one moment here since you are in a county jurisdiction.
That was all of it. I did coke.
Got it. We're going to try to get a trooper. Listen to me, okay? 1 second. We're going to try to get a trooper out there, deputy out there to you.
I might have missed something.
I understand. We're going to try to get a deputy out there to you here. I want you to hold on 1 second, okay?
I killed my children. It's a lot to explain, but in a nutshell, it's all my fault. I'm not even going. It's my fault. It's bad. I didn't hurt them on some when I say just kill, I didn't use knives or nothing to cut nobody or shoot nobody or nothing. It started out as me over disciplining. That's it. And leaving them out to eat, leaving stuff out to eat, it's a lot of stuff.
Okay, and sir, how did you do it? Sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, how did you do it?
I did. I beat on them sometimes. They didn't want to eat. I didn't force them to eat. I told them that it was a punishment not to eat. I did a bunch of different little things. Thought I was trying to. It's a lot of things, man. I'm trying to just do the right thing, because unless something, I tried to call a lawyer earlier, but I could have maybe called a lot more lawyers. I just did one. I should have just started calling all of them, and just trying to basically turn. I was basically trying to turn myself in without it being extra. But like I said, if y'all want to do it extra, that's fine. I didn't know your procedures.
All the children were homeschooled, according to ABC 11. Dickens did not properly register them for homeschooling with the state of North Carolina, so there was no oversight as to what was going on with these kids, clearly for months. As we've been working to learn more information about the past of Wellington Dickens III, we put his name into truthfinder.com. And when it came to his criminal history, this is what it showed. You can see that there are several cases that were filed in Superior Court in North Carolina. They say not specified, but we look at that and then we do our own research, kind of diving into what someone might be accused of. Clearly, in this case, he is accused of some horrific crimes. But this is a great example of what truthfinder.com can do. It is a powerful public records search service that we use here at Law&Crime to do research on the people involved in our stories. You plug in a name, you can get address information, criminal history, and much more. And it can also give you some peace of mind, even if you don't work in true crime, because it's one of the largest public records search services in the United States. And with the paid subscription service, you get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone, and that can include looking up registered sex offenders in your area. So stay informed, stay safe, search public records with Truthfinder. Go to www.truthfinder.com/OTC. There's a lot to unpack when it comes to Wellington Dickens III and his past and how it could have had an impact on what he allegedly did. Stephanie Ray Jones Dickens was Wellington's wife, and she died suddenly at their Zebulon home on April 21st, 2024. She was 37 years old, according to her obituary. She was a, quote, God-fearing, strong woman who tried her best at all times to please God alongside her family. Stephanie was 3 months pregnant at the time of her death, which authorities say was caused by complications from a miscarriage. Wellington Dickens found her at their home. The family's grief over her passing apparently left him as the sole caretaker for their 5 children. Now, authorities say that while Dickens and his late wife had extended family in the area, relatives had not publicly raised concerns about the children's safety. But remember, one child, according to law enforcement, was dead at least as far back as the spring of this year. Records reviewed by the Raleigh News and Observer newspaper show that Wellington Dickens III did have previous run-ins with the law, had run-ins with child welfare agencies. Like, for example, in 2015, he was charged with misdemeanor child abuse in Raleigh. That case was later dismissed. The following year, after the birth of his daughter Zoe, Wake County child welfare workers were called when hospital staff had raised concerns about the baby's health. We'll talk about a lawsuit related to that case in just a moment. Dickens and his wife refused routine medical care and repeatedly blocked social workers from seeing that child due to their religious and spiritual beliefs. Dickens was arrested in 2016 for contempt of court after failing to comply with a court order to allow the child to be examined. Now, we found lawsuits in federal court that Wellington Dickens III filed. One is suing a healthcare company, accusing that company of violating his religious beliefs. The other is a lawsuit against Durham County, North Carolina. In both cases, Dickens represented himself. In 2018, he sued Wake Med. He claimed that his religious beliefs were violated when doctors tested his newborn daughter in 2016 for jaundice after he and his wife had refused anything that would penetrate their baby's skin. So you think of blood tests, of vaccines. They refused all of that. They then left the hospital before being properly discharged, and then that's when Child Protective Services got involved. Now, Dickens' lawsuit was dismissed, and it wasn't the only lawsuit that caught our attention that he filed in federal court. There's one from 2017, where he sued Durham County, North Carolina, accusing the county of violating his rights, including his religious rights related to him signing a paternity document related to one of his kids. On page 8 of the lawsuit, he accuses the county of violating his religious rights because when he signed the document, it did not mention a federal statute related to child support that includes the numbers 666. Now, Dickens says that he was, quote, negligently coerced into associating myself with the mark of the beast labeled 666. And then he marks the parts of the Bible where the numbers 666 are associated with the devil. That lawsuit was also dismissed, but both of these cases may help paint the mindset and beliefs of a man now accused of horrific crimes that he could be put to death over if he is found guilty, if this case goes to trial. Joining us now to talk more about this horrific case out of North Carolina is Kristen Halkiotis, criminal defense attorney and a former prosecutor. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. I know this story has just been big news in your state, really tragic story that we just keep learning some really tough details about. Now that he has been indicted by a grand jury, what does that mean as far as where we go next in this case?
So the fact that he's now been indicted, that means that the defense attorney is now able to file motion for discovery. It means that all the discovery rules attach at this point, and the defense team will be able to get all of the discovery that the state is in possession of. So police reports, obviously those 911 calls have been released, but any sort of other evidence that the state has too, all has to be turned over now that the case has been indicted.
As far as the prosecutors, I mean, you have this 911 call that now everybody's heard. What more would you need if this even got to a trial? What more would you need to put this defendant away?
As a prosecutor, you want to make sure that you have done your due diligence and looked at all the evidence. They're going to want forensics. You're going to want to look. It's incredibly tragic. You're going to want to look at the autopsy reports and see what the cause of death for these children was, how that relates to or corroborates his confession that he made in that 911 call.
What, just for you, and I'm sure, I mean, as a criminal defense attorney, you're a former prosecutor, just what was your reaction when you heard the 911 call and everything that he said to this dispatcher on the phone?
My reaction, first of all, you think this is so horrible, this is so tragic, and I think everyone as a human being has that initial gut reaction. That's understandable. The next thing I'm thinking of, if I'm defending this person, my goal would be to save their life. My goal would be, a defense attorney is not going to be trying to get a not guilty in this case. A defense attorney is going to be looking to get life without parole as opposed to the death penalty for their client in a situation like this.
Because at this point, I mean, the 911 call itself is incredibly damning. I imagine if this even got to a trial, if you're a prosecutor, you just press play and then it kind of just tells the story of what happened. It would be a really tough case, to your point, to get a not guilty. What would the trial part be like, knowing, not that it would be a formality, but considering if you're a defense attorney and it's, okay, I'm not going to win this, but let's get to the death penalty part and maybe I can have some success in getting him life without parole. Like, what is the trial portion like when it almost seems like it's inevitable that we're just going to get to a point where there's a guilty verdict?
Well, and that's going to start a long time before. It's going to start when someone gets charged in a situation like this. If I'm defending a case like this, the first thing I want to do is I want to get a couple of experts involved. I want to get a psychiatrist involved, and I want to get a mitigation expert involved. And I'm looking to kind of front load that mitigation, if you will. Anything I can find that I can take to the district attorney to say, hey, the way we need to dispose of this case is maybe a life without parole. plea. If that's not going to work and it's going to be a trial, you're looking at mitigation evidence in that penalty phase. We're looking at, maybe there's a psychiatric defense, right? I think what's going to cut against the defense in this case for a psychiatric insanity defense is the fact that these crimes took place over such a period of time. It's going to be easier, for example, to get an insanity defense when you have one incident over a short period of time. With an insanity defense, the bar is very high. You have to be able to show that someone was unable to comprehend what they were doing, that it was right or wrong, the difference between right or wrong. Whereas you may be able to get mitigation psychiatric defense by way of diminished capacity, which, wouldn't serve as a complete defense to the charge, but could certainly serve as mitigation to bring this from a death case down to life without possibility of parole, just to be able to show that this person had enough going on psychiatrically that they were unable to form the necessary mens rea or state of mind for that offense.
Because I'm happy you brought that up, because I feel like conversationally in society, when we say someone's insane, you would look at like the lawsuits that he filed and he's referencing the devil, and someone conversationally might say, this person's insane. But in terms of the law, the fact that he called, that 911 call where he's calling, talking about these murders, the bodies were allegedly sealed, they were concealed and hidden away out of sight for months. All of those things could hurt any sort of, he was insane when he did this defense. And also, this goes back, I believe, to August is when potentially one of the children were killed.
Yeah, and I think too, I'm sure his defense team will also get him assessed for his present capacity to proceed. Because it sounds like at every stage, he has been perhaps out of touch with reality, putting it lightly. Whether it's the previous issues with CPS, which is a whole other can of worms, right? About why didn't they have eyes on these children for such a long period of time when there's been documented problems? And clearly they were under the jurisdiction of the court at some point in time, because I believe a judge held him in contempt a few years back for not complying with an order out of DSS court. And so, you're going to want to look at all of these things, and as a defense attorney, just to see, does your client, did he have something going on psychiatrically in the past that could serve as mitigation? Does he have something going on presently that could serve, where he needs to, for example, regain capacity to proceed before they can go ahead with this case? There's all kinds of variables with that, but I think that at the end of the day, mental health is probably the only defense that you're going to have potentially to a case like this. It's so tragic.
It really is. And I think for the prosecutor's side of it, because if and I don't know this prosecutor, and I know every jurisdiction's different, but if you're a hard charging prosecutor who's an advocate for the death penalty, it seems like you would have a strong case where you could get to that point. What typically goes into the calculation a prosecutor's making where they probably could call pretty quickly, I would assume, and say, let's do life without parole, after kind of going through some of the mental health parts of it? What's the calculation of, I could probably get this deal, but also I believe this person should get the death penalty. I'm going to move forward with a trial and try to hold him, to the highest punishment that we have as a society.
I would anticipate that the prosecutor will go ahead and declare it capital from the outset. And then, who knows? There's been so much, this has been, in the news quite a bit. It's made national press. Obviously, we're sitting here on this national show talking about it. And so I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see it end up at a trial. Not at all. Yeah.
And as far as, I think too, for the defense, because this has been such news, and I'm sure there are going to be jurors that have heard the 911 call already, and it's hard not to have an opinion about this case. How do you get a fair jury if you're a defense attorney in a case like this that's so high profile, and there is so much that's already out there in this story?
Well, that's something where when you're picking a jury, when you're in jury selection, you're going to be asking these jurors questions about how much pretrial publicity they've been exposed to. a defense attorney, depending on the situation, can also file a motion to change venue if they think that they're unable to get a fair trial because the population in that county is small enough that everyone has probably been influenced by media reporting. They can potentially, depending on the circumstance, file a motion to change venue to a different county to change the jury pool. But in a case like this, I think that's hard because I think this is receiving press everywhere. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find anywhere in North Carolina where the press coverage hasn't been extensive.
We talked a little bit about some of the lawsuits that he had filed. This goes back to 2018. This was before his wife passed away. Just what do you make of, I'm sure you've read dozens, if not hundreds of lawsuits, thousands in your career, but you read through it. You see him talking about 666. He's talking about the devil. How could those types of statements in lawsuits previously in the past factor into what his defense could look like?
Well, again, I think that this could potentially be part of a pattern of some sort of diminished capacity that the defense could potentially argue, right? That maybe, this person has been on the brink, been teetering, been detached from reality for quite some period of time.
In the juror, the voir dire part of it, do you get people's opinions on the death penalty in a case that could become a death penalty case? Like going into it, do you have an idea of how these jurors could punish a defendant if they're found guilty?
That's a great question. So, in North Carolina, in order to, if there is a capital trial during jury selection, everyone sitting on that jury has to be death qualified, which means that they all have to be able to say that they would be able to consider the death penalty as a punishment. So in other words, anyone who comes into court for jury selection who says, no, I could not ever vote for the death penalty under any circumstance, will automatically be excused.
How does that impact the jury pool? Because I think if you're looking for someone who is open-minded, maybe someone who's very forgiving, it seems like those type of people, if they're not interested in even considering the death penalty, that you're removing a lot of folks that could be, this is just kind of my unprofessional opinion. I would think a lot of people that would be sympathetic to the defense would be completely ruled out of even being considered for a jury in a case like this.
You're exactly right. And that is the argument that all defense attorneys will make in a situation like that. It's that this death qualification process is inherently unfair to the defense. And
then now that he's been indicted by a grand jury, I guess what would you consider or expect the timeline to be going forward until, if he was to go all the way through a trial, all the way through a sentencing phase, like how long could that take?
It could take up to a couple of years, maybe more, maybe less, just depending on the extent of the evaluations that are needed, the experts that are brought into the case. The state, this is also something that I think you heard the prosecutor in a previous press conference that they had. This is not something where they try to do things hastily. They want to take their time, make sure they get it right. But also, again, depending on what's necessary in the case, in terms of who the defense team brings in, it really depends. But I wouldn't expect a trial before next year.
Because even with that, when you have 4 victims, and even if there's a lot of evidence, I guess what goes into a defense attorney's mindset where it is, we're going to go through every single, victim in this case and try to, during a trial lay out the evidence as to why we, if they want to say that he's not guilty and try to actually go at it. Does a defense attorney have to calculate, like, does a jury want to go from one victim to another and be as methodical as possible, as opposed to just almost surrendering that not guilty verdict to just say, like, we're going to get to the sentencing phase?
Well, I think that it really, it depends. And I'd say that in the general rule in most capital cases is that if the state is not going to take death off the table, you have the trial. I can think of one example in recent years where that has not held true. That would be the Parkland shooting case in Florida, where the defense attorneys actually took a big risk, they pled their client guilty, they went straight to a sentencing phase, and the jury came back with life in prison. But that's a rarity. So most generally, when the state is not taking the death penalty off the table, you're going to see the defense put the state through its paces in terms of both a guilt-innocence phase and then a penalty phase. Of course, never really expecting a not guilty in that guilt-innocence phase, but just making the state jump through the hoops they need to jump through in order to get that conviction. But it also helps put out, if the defense does have mitigation in that phase, they can put it on then, they can put it on during the penalty phase. So generally that's what it looks like.
Yeah, and we'll see how it plays out. I mean, it just, every single time the story comes up, it seems like there's just new information that just makes it so difficult for these 4 lives that were lost. Kristen Halkiotis, thank you for taking the time to be with us on Law&Crime, from North Carolina, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor. We really appreciate your time with us today on this tough story.
My pleasure. Thank you, Chris.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law&Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.